Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into something crucial for hunters, tree stand safety and the risks involved. We've looked at a bunch of sources, mostly grounded in research from the American Hunting Lease Association and also the Tree Stand Safety Awareness Foundation, or TSSAF. Our mission here is to, well, cut through the usual warnings and really pinpoint the specific technical issues and maybe the psychological traps too that make using tree stands potentially dangerous. And we have to start with this number. It's frankly hard to ignore. The data points to a pretty staggering risk. Something like 1 in 3 hunters will have some kind of tree stand accident in their lifetime. So if you're a dedicated hunter, you really need to hear this because, well, the odds aren't great if you don't take every precaution.
That 1 in 3 stat, yeah, it really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? And when groups like TSSF talk about their goal, it's not just about making things a little safer. They're aiming for 0 accidents. Period.
Yeah.
They really stress that, okay, yeah, the hunt is thrilling, but the one thing every single hunter shares is wanting to get home safe. That's really the core idea behind all the guidelines we're about to talk about. And it's critical to understand almost every single fatal incident involves a hunter either not wearing a full body harness or not being tethered correctly. It's fundamentally preventable. So our focus really has to be on consistent use and doing it right, technically speaking.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. Let's drill down into these ABCs of tree stand safety from the TSSAF. These are meant to be specific, memorable steps to keep you secure when you're most vulnerable climbing up and coming down. So A is for always inspect your equipment. Now that sounds obvious, right? But for this deep dive, we need specifics, not just, a quick look. We're not just talking about making sure your harness made it into the truck.
Exactly. And for hunters who've been doing this a while, that inspection can become, well, automatic, almost mindless. And that's where the danger creeps in. We need to focus on things like material failure, which you often can't even see easily. So when we say inspect, we mean actually checking the date stamp on your harness on your tether lines. Did you know that most harnesses and lifelines actually have a shelf life? Often it's about 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, things like UV light, dampness, they degrade the synthetic fibers over time. So that harness might look fine, but if it's old or been stored poorly, it could fail. You also need to be looking for, say, tiny cracks in plastic parts of the stand. Check metal for rusts, rust fractures. That level of detail.
Okay, that's a really important point. It's not just wear and tear. It's the material itself aging out. Got it. Yeah. What about B? Buckle your harness securely.
Right. That seems like the easiest step, but it's maybe the hardest one to get right consistently. You see hunters wearing it too loose, maybe over bulky clothes early in the season, or they don't get the leg straps quite right. If you fall, a loose harness can shift badly. It can constrict around your legs, and that massively increases the risk of suspension trauma, even if help gets there fast. So it needs to be snug, clipped in securely. You confirm that fit before you even think about climbing.
Snug fit. Check leg straps. Okay. And then C, which you said needs to be technically precise, connect before you leave the ground. This is where that continuous safety line comes in, isn't it?
Absolutely. The source material is really clear on this, even down to the hardware. You need to use a continuous lifeline or a similar climbing rope system. The whole point is 0 time unsecured. 0. So you set up that safety line on the tree first before your boots leave the ground. Then you clip your harness tether to that line before you take that first step up. As you climb, you just slide your tether up the lifeline. You're always connected. That tricky moment, stepping from the climbing sticks onto the platform, that's secured. If your tether rope is adjusted right, you can move, but you can't fall more than just a few inches.
Right, those transition points. That's where the statistics show a lot of falls happen.
Exactly.
And the continuous lifeline just takes away that risk because you're never tempted to unclip just to make that step. Okay, so we've covered this sort of mechanical side of preventing failure, but we need to talk about the mental side. The checks before the hunt even starts. This is where we move from how the gear works to maybe why even experienced hunters sometimes fail to use it.
Yeah, and we have to be honest here. Gear failure is actually pretty rare compared to, well, human error or human decision-making. Think about getting ready before the hunt. We're not just checking if the gear works. We're battling something called normalization of deviance. It's a known thing in high-risk fields. It's basically a cognitive trap. You make small, unsafe compromises, maybe skip a check. use slightly worn gear, and because nothing bad happened last time, it starts to feel acceptable. Maybe that ratchet strap looks a bit frayed or your boot soles are getting slick, but you think, it was fine last season, good for one more year. And
Yeah.
each time you get away with it, that internal safety bar gets set a little lower. Pretty soon the compromised gear feels like the normal way to operate.
Wow, normalization of deviance. So the risk isn't some sudden external thing. It's more like this slow internal drift toward accepting lower standards because you got away with shortcuts before.
Precise.
And that leads right into this just this once thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The AHLA source specifically flags this as deadly. It's often not the gear failing, but a bad decision made under pressure or maybe just inconvenience.
Exactly right. Picture this. A hunter drives, say, 40 miles before dawn, hikes in half a mile, gets right to the base of the tree, and realizes the harness is still hanging back in the garage. Just the sheer hassle of going back triggers what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy.
Ah, right.
You've already invested so much time, effort, gas money, and the brain just screams, I can't waste this whole hunt. I'll just be extra careful, only stay up for an hour.
Yeah.
That investment, that sunk cost, makes people rationalize away the risk. They forget that the actual risk is statistically huge, even for a short time. So they trade maybe 90 minutes of inconvenience to go get the gear for this massive potential of a life-changing injury, or worse.
And the source material, it mentions countless stories where exactly that decision, hunting unsecured, just this once, ended in tragedy. It really drives home that preparation isn't just about packing your gear, it's about setting things up so you don't have the chance to make those bad mental compromises later when you're tired, cold, and just want to get hunting.
You've got it.
So if we accept that, the individual mind can falter under pressure because you're tired or biased, like you said, or just plain forgetful, then the next layer of safety has to come from outside. This is where the sources seem to pivot quite strongly toward the idea of community, collective vigilance.
Yeah, that's a big shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting, that cultural pivot towards accountability.
Yeah.
How do we make sure the safety checks don't just rely on that one person stressed out, half awake at 4:30 in the morning?
It comes down to normalizing intervention, making it okay to check on each other. For a long time, I think hunting safety was seen as very private. What you do on your hunt, your lease, that's your business. But when an accident happens, it doesn't just affect that one person. It affects search and rescue, friends, family, and honestly, the reputation of all hunters.
Yeah.
So this means we need to move past just kind of hoping our hunting buddies are doing the right thing. We need to actively check in, ask those simple, direct questions, but without sounding like you're accusing them. Hey, did you check the date on your harness this season? Or you using that continuous lifeline every time?
Yeah.
It just shifts the responsibility a bit from being purely on the individual to being something the group shares.
And maybe we shouldn't be afraid of that responsibility, right? The most practical example the source gives is about visible accountability. Like if you're helping your friend load up his truck for the hunt, you see he's got his bow, his pack, his rifle, whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't see the harness or the lifeline.
Yeah.
You kind of have an obligation, don't you? To just say, hey man, looks like you forgot your harness.
Exactly.
It might feel a little awkward for a second, right? Nobody loves being reminded or called out.
Sure, it can be.
But that tiny moment of discomfort completely prevents that just this once scenario from even starting because the gear is there. It's ready. We're basically choosing a quick, maybe slightly awkward conversation over potentially life-altering consequences down the line.
That's the goal, right?
Right.
Making sure oversight doesn't lead to tragedy.
That's it exactly. The sources are really clear on this. The difference between a close call and a fatal fall is almost always whether that tether system was there and used correctly. So by making sure your friends, your family, whoever you hunt with have the gear with them, you take away that mental pressure that leads people to rationalize taking huge risks. Okay, let's pull this all back together for you, the listener. We kicked off with that pretty grim 1 in 3 accident rate, a serious number. To fight that, you've now got the deeper understanding of the ABCs. A, address potential material failure. Check those dates. Inspect components beyond just a glance.
Right.
B, buckle up securely. Snug fit. Check the straps to prevent suspension trauma issues. And C, connect continuously. Use that lifeline system from the moment you leave the ground until you're safely back down. No gaps.
Crucially, yes. And we also explored that mental battleground, fighting the normalization of deviance where small risks become routine, and recognizing that sunk cost fallacy, which fuels that incredibly dangerous just this once decision. These mental traps are just as real a threat as worn out gear. So this brings up a final important question, something for you to think about after this. If we know that using the continuous lifeline system consistently and correctly is really the only guaranteed way to get that risk close to zero, and we also know that people, well, sometimes fail to comply, especially when we're tired or it feels inconvenient, how do we as a hunting community adjust our standards? How do we structure things so that the minor, maybe awkward social moment of checking on a friend, of intervening, is always seen as way more important than the potentially catastrophic result of just letting that negligence slide? What kind of system, maybe cultural, maybe practical, can really guarantee that every harness gets packed and every harness gets used every single time?